Hi everyone, my name is Brendan McCoy. In this course, I'm going to show you how you can use a free trial of QuickBooks Online to better and more effectively track your money and your finances. I help individuals, families, and small businesses all across the country with their accounting, bookkeeping, and QuickBooks needs. The one thing I've noticed while helping people all across the country is that no one has any idea what accounting, bookkeeping, or QuickBooks means. Most people are too busy, or it's boring, or they don't really care about their money, which is all well and fine for them. However, you do want to track this information for yourself because you can hire someone like myself and hopefully, they work out for you. But I get hired a lot to clean up other bookkeepers' messes. So the reason I wanted to do this is I want you to know how to do it yourself so that you are totally informed of what's going on in your individual life, your family life, or your small business life. So over the next hour, I'm going to show you how to access a free trial of QuickBooks Online to finally jumpstart your understanding of where everything goes. So whether you're a freelancer, you're a small business owner, you're the head of a household, or you're just an individual that's looking for a little bit better system to track your money, this course will guide you through the exact steps that I took to accurately assess someone's financial data. This course is based entirely on a real-life client of mine. So this client is from the Philadelphia area, and he hired me in July of 2018. The reason he hired me is he wanted to know what happened for the first 6 months of 2018. Where did all of his money go? That was his main question. So from there, he wanted to make some adjustments and some assessments, which is totally on him. However, to kind of make those assessments, we need to know where we were. So in this course, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I did this to provide him with accurate and up-to-date financial information. So again, this course is structured so you can follow along with me in real time as I do this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a free trial of QuickBooks Online. From there, I'm going to give you his banking information, and I do not mean his username or password, unfortunately. What I mean is I'm going to give you his Excel downloads, which you can download from any major bank, and then you are able to organize this information and then import it directly into QuickBooks Online one time. From there, I'm going to take the information in QuickBooks and I'm going to reconcile it against the bank account. Reconciling against the bank account means that I'm not missing anything, that basically whatever happened in the bank is happening in QuickBooks and now it's all in one place. So I'm going to reconcile two accounts. Over the next hour, I hope you're able to learn that you're not alone in the bookkeeping world. There are people that will help you out. There are people that will help you understand, what's kind of going on each month, whether or not your bookkeeper or your accountant or yourself does that already. So please follow along. This is one of my first trainings, so please feel free to leave plenty of comments and plenty of reviews on how I can do better, other things that you may or may not want to know, if something doesn't make sense, etc. At the very end of this, I'm going to leave my cell phone number, my email address. Feel free to reach out, text or call me if you have questions on your specific QuickBooks or your bookkeeping or something about the training. If something doesn't make sense, feel free to reach out. I'll definitely be able to help you out. So I appreciate you guys joining, and I'll see you in the next section. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So in this section, I'm going to show you how to set up a free trial of QuickBooks Online to start tracking some of our financial information for our freelance marketer in Philadelphia. Now, the first step is we want to go to quickbooks.intuit.com. There is also a link in the resource below. Once we are here, we want to set up a 30-day free trial. Now, in this screen, it's going to give you a lot of different options and a lot of different plans. For us, the best plan is the Simple Start. In my opinion, this is the best system for a newcomer to accounting systems, to bookkeeping, to finances. It allows you to do pretty much everything that you're going to need to be able to do. If you own a small business, I do suggest getting the Essentials or even the Plus. I would never suggest getting the Self-Employed for different reasons. The main is that you cannot reconcile. We'll get into reconciliations and why it's important to reconcile later on. But for this case, we want to use the Simple Start. Now, if you do want to buy it now, you will be able to save 50% for 3 months. So you'll be able to get it for $12 a month for 3 months if you want to. If you don't want to buy it yet and you just want to follow along, I would select this free trial for 30 days and go down here to try it free. Now, there's no credit card information required. You really don't even need a real email or a real name. Now, what I normally do to avoid getting spam is going to a fake email generator. Now this one is emailfake.com. It automatically generates you with a random email that who knows what it's from. So what I'm going to do is copy this information, come back over here and say, okay, I'm going to use this. Now I'm going to confirm. Now I'm going to put in my cell phone number, and feel free to give me a call whenever. And I'm also going to create a password that I will remember. Now, hopefully that was easy enough. You want to, again, get a fake email address so you don't get spam. If you plan on buying it and you don't really care about spam, you can use your own email. Just know that once the email is registered, your free trial goes away. Now, let's go down here to sign up with email. Okay, so now it's going to text me a code. 709054. Okay, so I'm going to hit continue. So again, they want me to start the trial now, which is okay with me. I just want the free trial. Now, there is something called payroll, which we do not need to worry about unless you own a small business. If you own a small business, reach out to me and I'll be able to set you up with payroll. Now, let's go to the continue with trial. Okay, instantly see our profits. That's exactly what we're looking for. So forgive me for the lag time here. Okay, so now this is the first screen you're going to see. This is our setting up my QuickBooks. So for this case, I'm going to call it my favorite marketer. What would I describe him as? A marketer. Marketing and advertising. Now, if you have been using QuickBooks Desktop, you are able to bring in your data over from that. For this case, that is way beyond what we're doing here. We're just going to click Next. Okay, so now that we're here, what do we really want to do? Well, we're not too worried about sending and tracking invoices. We don't have any inventory. We're not worried about retail sales. We definitely want to track our bills. We definitely want to organize our expenses. So we'll select these two. So now I'll come down here. I am all set. Okay, so here is my home screen of QuickBooks Online. Now, as you can see, yes, let's go. And as you can see, there's going to be a million pop-ups you're going to get. No matter when you use QuickBooks, there's always going to be a million pop-ups. Yes, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Now that we're here, this is our dashboard. Now this is going to be your snapshot into what's going on. Now this screen, while it's nice to look at, it's not the most helpful screen for us. We can't really get anywhere from here, especially when we have no data in here yet. Now, with that being said, as we get data in here, you will see these numbers start to change. You will see expenses for last month. You'll see your net income for September. Maybe we'll link a bank account. That's, something that we can kind of get into. But for now, we're going to just kind of poke around and see what's going on. So we're not really going to send invoices. We don't have any sales. We haven't put any data in yet. This is kind of just our overall layout. Now that we're here, so from here, now that we looked at the dashboard, there's really only 4 or 5 things that are really important to us particularly. Those are the banking screen, the report screen, the accounting screen, and finally, once we get there, our reconcile screen. Now, for now, let's first start with our accounting screen. Now, this screen is your backbone of what is actually going on. This is called your chart of accounts. Now, your chart of accounts are what your profit and loss is going to say, which we went over already, and it's also what your balance sheet is going to say. Now, let's go in here and see what is going on with our chart of accounts. Okay, so now that we are here, hopefully you remember some of these terms. Assets, equity, income, expenses. These types are where your data is going to go. So for example, if we remember assets minus liabilities equal equity, all that information is going to show up on your balance sheet. So for example, if you're putting in an expense and you want to say you spent $1,000 on rent, it is not an asset, it is not a liability, and it is not a equity account. Now, from here, This, again, is going to be the most important section of your QuickBooks. As you can see, it comes with a pre-filled detail of what they want to call things. For example, you'll have your advertising and marketing expenses, you'll have your bank charges, your car and truck payments, maybe you pay some contractors, insurance, etc. Now, this is all fully customizable, however you want to call it. Now, what you can do is there's two ways to customize this. So, for example, if I want to make a category and I want to call it, let's say, fun. These are all the fun payments I have, whether it's going to the movies or going out to eat, whatever it is. So if this is for the movies, and this is an expense, and this is something that we expend our money on, we want to go up here to our account type. The account type is where it's going to lie. Is it going to lie on the balance sheet, or is it going to lie on the profit and loss? Now, like we went over before, there are assets, liabilities, and equity, which lie on the balance sheet. There is also your income and expenses, which lie on your profit and loss statement. Now, for this case, I want to call going to the movies a particular expense so that I can track how much money I'm spending at the movies each weekend. So in this case, that will show up on our profit and loss. We want to go down here to our expenses. Now, we have this detail type. While this isn't the most important thing ever, it does help for your own sanity. Now, we called it entertainment, and now the name up here, I want to call this movies. Now, every time I go to the movie and every time I tag something to this movie category, it will show up in this account, in this detail type, by this name. Now from here, all I'm going to do is hit save and close. This now adds the movie account to my chart of accounts, as we can see right here. Now, there is another quicker way that I personally maneuver with the chart of accounts, and that's sometimes just renaming things. For example, this is a marketer. He will not have this ask my accountant expense. Now, what I would want to do is go over here to the right, click on the drop down arrow, click edit, and I want to call this, let's see, I want to call this electric payments. Now, he has utilities, he has multiple utilities for his house. Now, we want to say, okay, this is an expense, it's a utility, and now we want to say it's electric payment. So when we drill down, we'll be able to know how much we're spending on electricity each month. Now, this description, we're just going to remove this. So now I'm going to hit save and close. Now, the next area is going to be, this is going to be our income section. So in this case, we don't want to call it sales. He doesn't really like the word sales. He wants to call it marketing income. Now, we can do what we just did, which is going over here and saying, okay, we're going to edit and call this marketing income. Okay, so now I'm going to hit save and close. Now I have his income, what he wants to call it, as an income category. Again, the most important thing in the chart of accounts is the account type up here. Now, he, again, has a mortgage and he has a car payment. Now, if we're following along earlier, we know that those are liabilities. Those are something that he owes. Now, the easiest way to keep track and to show you where it'll show up on the balance sheet is to set this up right now. And I will tell you exactly how much he owes on the car and on the mortgage. So the first thing I want to do is set up a long-term liability. I want to call it a note payable. You can also call it an other long-term liability, not so much a shareholder note. Basically, a long-term, the difference between a long-term liability and a short-term liability is a year. Typically, after a year, it becomes a long-term liability. So unless you plan on paying your car off in the next year, or your mortgage off in the next year, it would be considered a long-term liability. So in this case, I'm going to say no payable. I'm going to go over here and say mortgage payable. Now, I'm going to say that this had an unpaid balance of $200,000 as of, now the dates are very important as we'll go through. As of 01/01/2018 was $200,000. Now, in the next section, I will actually give you the data that we're going to use. We're going to start on January 1st, 2018. So the best way to do this is to set up the initial mortgage balance on January 1st, 2018. Now, we have the mortgage recorded, and I will show you right after this where it lies on the balance sheet. So I'm going to hit Save and New, because I want to set up the car loan as well. So I'm going to go back down here, and I'm going to say, okay, we have our other current liabilities or our long term. Now the car still has some time to pay off. So I'm going to go down here, Note Payable, and I'm going to go over here and say car loan. And on 1/1/2018, I'm going to type this one in. I'm going to say that we had $20,000 left as of 1/1/2018. So if you look at your car statement or your mortgage statement and there is a day, that day will give you the balance on that day. Now if you're doing this by yourself, follow along with your own mortgage or car statements. You'll be able to look at the statement and it'll tell you exactly how much you owe as of any given day. Now if you start QuickBooks on that day, use that balance. So I'm going to hit Save and Close. And now I'm going to show you what just happened because of that. Now, as you can see, I have a balance here now. I have $20,000 here. I have $200,000 here. And I now have this equity account that's $220,000. So let's go here. Now, the next area we want to go to is the reports. So I'm going to go down here. Now, we will go further into reports later on. However, for the sake of this, I'm going to show you the balance sheet right now. So with those two entries, you can now see that I owe $220,000. That means I am in the hole and my total equity is $220,000. I do not own anything. Right now, we have no other data in here except for the amount that's left on his mortgage and the amount that's left on his car. As we go through this section, we'll show you how to input all of that information and get you to have some assets and some more liabilities. Now, let's move on to the banking section of QuickBooks Online. Now, I'm not going to show you how to connect your account automatically right now. I will save that for a later training. For now, we're going to upload transactions manually. Now, the most important way to do this is to do the following. We want to get your information from your bank. Now, for this case, I already have the information from his bank account for you. And the next session will show you how to obtain it, how to organize it, and how to get it ready to just upload it simply right here. Now, the banking feature, again, is something that you will want to utilize if you're using this full term. You will actually want to connect your bank account to QuickBooks. It'll make your life way easier to have your transactions automatically feeding into your QuickBooks as opposed to what we're going to do now. Now, what we're going to do now is not that much more difficult. However, I don't know everyone's bank account password to set it up. So, let's move on to the next section. Okay, so the final section of this area is going to be my reports. Now, we kind of briefly went over this a little bit. However, I'm going to go into the report screen here. Now, as you can see, the two reports that I talked about that were the most important are the balance sheet and the profit and loss. Now, there are a ton of reports on here. I'm not going to go into all of them. However, you can kind of scroll through here at your own leisure and figure out, what makes the most sense for you. If you own a small business, it may not be a bad idea to start tracking some of the bills that you owe to people, some of the money that's owed to you, so that you have a better, clearer understanding of what's going on. Since we're doing this retroactively, the only two reports that really matter to us are the balance sheet and the profit and loss. Now, we went to the balance sheet a little bit, but if we go into the profit and loss, we'll see that nothing happened yet. And you'll see this as we go further. I'm going to hit next on all of this to get rid of it, because it really annoys me. Now, as you can see, there's Nothing here yet. Now, what will be here is going to be the data that we're putting in. And again, what feeds into the profit and loss and what feeds into the balance sheet is this chart of accounts. Now, in the next section, I'm going to give you his banking information, and we're going to play with the chart of accounts a little bit more. Then we're going to upload this information, categorize it, and produce a profit and loss and balance sheet. See you in the next section. Hi everyone. Now that we have QuickBooks set up a little bit, now that we have our free trial active, we want to start getting some of this information into QuickBooks Online itself. So, how did I do this? Well, the first thing I did was I logged into his bank account and I exported all of his information into a CSV Excel file. Now, he has it's called Key Bank, which is a bank on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. He also has an American Express credit card that we want to keep track of, okay? So this is exactly what was downloaded from Key Bank when I got it. Now, a couple things. As you can see, the date is here, the amount here, there are negative amounts and there are positive amounts. So determining those is going to be very important. The next is my description. So this is exactly what the bank said as it was coming through. Finally, we have our running balance over here. So he started off the year with $5,000 in his bank account, okay? So the next thing that I would do is go to his credit card account. Now, I did the same exact thing here. I logged into his American Express. I exported all of his data for the first 6 months of 2018 directly into an Excel CSV file. Now, both of these files, the original file and the completed file, are going to be in your resource section if you need to refer to it. So, the first thing that I want to do, here is I want to start to organize both the checking and the credit card accounts. And what I mean by organizing is I want to call things what I want to call them. I want to know what's going on. So the easiest way to do this would be this. I typically get this in Excel and then I filter over here. Okay, filter. And then I'm going to sort by the description. Now, the reason I sort by the description is I can start to call everything the same name. As you can see, I've already started to do that a little bit. Now I have his accurate payments, so these are his car payments. I have the American Express payments. Now these are the actual transfers from the checking account paying the credit card. Now, transfers are something that you're going to definitely want to keep an eye on. Now, in my experience, if people call me to clean up their QuickBooks, it always has to deal with transfers. Now, it's a different story. However, at the end of the day, we have to realize that the money is going from one account into another. So it's simply a transfer. We don't actually pick up any of the expense. Now, what you can typically see sometimes is when I'm going through adding this $2,000 or $3,000 payment to American Express, some people call it a $3,000 expense to American Express. Now, what I want to do here before I organize is I want to set up his checking account and I want to set up his credit card account as two chart of account items. So now I'm going to go back into QuickBooks Online. So now that I'm back in QuickBooks Online, the first thing I want to do is set up his checking account and his credit card account as two chart of account items. So I'm going to go over here to my accounting section. It will give me to the chart of account. Once I'm here, I'm going to go into new. And before, you saw that we did an expense, and we did a liability, and we did some income. So we did all three of those. Now, what we're going to do here is create an asset. And as we talked about before, an asset is what you have on hand, what you own. So in this case, I want to set up a bank. Now, the bank is exactly that. It's his checking account. It is how much money he has in his checking account. You'll see some other detail types in here. Now, for this case, I'm going to call it checking. And just for the sake of convenience, I'm going to call it his checking account bank. Bank checking account. That might be easier. So now we want to, again, at the beginning of the year, as you can see over here, he had Wow. He had a $5,000 balance, right? This is his balance. So this was on 12/31/2017, right? So now all of this, so as you can see, if you follow it pretty simply, he has $5,000 on 12/31. The first thing he did on January 2nd, 2018 was took $100 out of the ATM. So that brings my balance down to $4,900, right? You'll have to follow along with this so that we can reconcile. However, for the sake of time here, we're going to go back into here and say he had $5,000 on 01/01/2018. So I'm going to hit save and new, because I want to also set up his American Express credit card. So I'm going to go down here, and now that we just did the bank, right? So this is not a bank account. This is a credit card account. A credit card is a liability, as we talked about before. So we set up the bank account, which is the asset, and now we set up the credit card, which is a liability. The liability is what he owes on that credit card. So if you look at your balance on your credit card and it says $10,000, then your credit card balance on QuickBooks and on your balance sheet should say $10,000. It is not a bank account. It is a credit card. It's a liability. Now, for the sake of this, I'm going to call this his American Express credit card. Now again, this had a balance on 1/1/2018. So I'm going to go 01/01/2018. I'm going to go back to my Excel here, and it had a $6,000 balance on 12/31/2017. So as you can see here, now I'll go into this a little bit more as we go to organize, but as you can see, he had the $6,000. He went to Bed Bath & Beyond on January 3rd, 2018. He spent $148. So now my running balance for my American Express is now at $6,148.39, because it's adding in this payment, or excuse me, this charge here. Now, I'm going to go back over here and say, okay, this had a $6,000 balance as of 1/1/2018. Hit save and close. Now, I'm back in my chart of accounts. Now, if we're following along, we should know that my balance sheet should now have an asset of $5,000. We haven't put any information in yet. So just starting off, we already have balances in here. You need a balance to start, right? Whether it's a zero balance or whatever it is, it does need to agree to what's actually going on in the bank account. So now we haven't entered any income, we haven't entered any expenses, but without even entering data, we already have information in our QuickBooks. And now, this is why the balance sheet's so important, because it'll show you right now where we are. So right now, we have $5,000. This is how much we have. This is how much we own, right? We owe $6,000 to the American Express credit card. We owe $20,000 to the car, and we owe $200,000 to the mortgage. At the end of the day, we are $221,000 in the hole. And again, we get this number from subtracting my assets minus my liabilities, and this gives me my total equity of $221,000. This is how much we're behind, right? So now, without even entering anything, we already have information on our balance sheet. We have the balances that are starting off on January 1st, 2018. For your own personal use, if you're going forward without this, I would say go and pick a day that best suits you. If you want to start, it's already October 2019. It may not be a bad idea to start on January 1st, 2019. Now, if you have a mortgage, look at your mortgage statement on January 1st, 2019. If you have a car, look at your car balance on January 1st, 2019. Excuse me. If you have a credit card, look at your balance on January 1st, 2019. What is the balance? Now, final thing, go to your checking, savings, or whatever asset account you have. Look at the balance on January 1st, 2019. Follow along the same steps I just used and input your opening balances. Now, inputting your opening balances is easily the most forgotten thing to do for people that are trying to do this. Most people come to me and their bank balance says they have negative $50,000. Well, that's because they input all their information and they never said that it started with $100,000. So automatically they're behind. Automatically they're screwed up. You need to pick a day, stick to that day, and start from there, and use those balances. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Let's Organize the Data section. So in the previous section, we gathered the client's information directly from his bank account. We went into his checking account, we logged on. We went to his credit card account, we logged on. In both separate accounts, for the first 6 months of 2018, I exported a spreadsheet directly from the bank account. Now, once I exported, it looked exactly like this. Now, the next step after we gather the information is going to be to organize this raw data and get it into a format that we can easily understand, easily digest, and most importantly, import into QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to start with his checking account. So please refer to the resource section for this spreadsheet, which is called Raw Data Checking. You'll be able to follow along and look at exactly what I'm doing here. Now, once you have this open, the first thing we want to do is to create a copy of this worksheet, which I'm going to do by right-clicking. I'm going to go to Move or Copy. I'm going to move it to the end, and I'm going to create a copy. Now, the next step is to create a new name. Now, we want to create a new name so that we know our original file over here and our manipulated file over here, or our import file over here. This is what we're actually going to import once we're done organizing. So I'm going to rename this and call this Checking Account Import. Okay, so now that we're here, the first thing I'm going to do in this new Checking Account Import tab is I'm going to delete column 2. The reason I'm deleting column 2 is I will now have a better sort and filter option to manipulate this spreadsheet to how I want it to look. Okay? So, all this information, like I said, came directly from the client's bank account, right? Column A, column B, column C, and column D. What I want to do now is I want to create a new section in column D and call it a category. This new category is what I'm going to call the what. The what is simply what I'm going to call this information. For example, if you look at column C and you see the ATM withdrawal, I want to name all ATM withdrawals a certain category. Now, the key here is that we want to make this as simple and as personal to you as possible. We want to do this in order to really know what each of our descriptions say. Instead of having an ATM withdrawal, a U.S. Insurance, Dr. Rose, ATM withdrawal, Maple Glen as separate categories, I want to lump and categorize certain descriptions into certain categories. So, the next step that I want to do here is I want to add a filter to row 1 and sort by the description. So I'm over here in row 1, I'm going to copy all of these, or not, excuse me, not copy, highlight all of these, go over here to sort and filter, and I'm going down here to this filter option. Now, the reason that we do this is that we'll be able to copy and paste the same category for every single transaction that we need. For example, let's sort by the description, right? Now that these are all sorted alphabetically, let's take a look at column 2, where it says Acura Payment. The first thing I want to do here is I want to go into column D, I want to right-click in column D, and I want to insert a new tab. I'm going to call this the Category tab now. I'm going to have the filter on here already. So, this description says Acura Payment. Now, I know that the Acura payment for him is simply his car payment each month. So, in column D, I'm going to call the Acura payment a car payment. Now, if you remember correctly from earlier, this category called car payment is going to show up on either my profit and loss or my balance sheet, depending on the account type. So now that I know I want to call Acura payments car payments, I can simply copy and paste this all the way down. I'm going to repeat this process for every single transaction on the spreadsheet. Again, this is just an example for this particular client. You may want to call certain descriptions certain categories, or you may want to go into more detail. But for the sake of time here, I categorize this entire Excel based on his needs and have a final product also located in the resource section. I'm now going to bring up the final product. So as you can see here, here is my final product. I went through and categorized each and every description to call it what it is, to call it what we want to analyze it as. So let me just go through a couple of these as examples. We already went over the car payment. Now let's go over some other ones. Here's an Annette's window cleaning. So instead of calling the category an Annette's window cleaning, I'm just simply going to call it window cleaning. Now we have another one called ATM withdrawal. So for him, this is really his walking around spending money. And as you can see, I went through and categorized everything. Here's some utility payments. Here's some eating out. Here's some more utility payments, Commonwealth, membership fees, deposits I'm calling income. Now, this is really a process for you to follow, whatever you want to call it. Again, the category in column D is where it's going to show up on a profit and loss or a balance sheet. Okay, so you might be thinking, why can't I just use column C as my category? Now, sometimes it makes sense to do that, but in most cases, you're really going to have a huge profit and loss. And what I mean by that is kind of, let's sort by this and show you what I mean here. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to sort by column D, which is my category. And let's take an example here. Let's take eating out, for example. Now, when I go to analyze, I can analyze every dollar I spend at Burger King, every dollar I spend at Maple Glen Pizza, every dollar I spend at Panera Bread, and every dollar I spend at Subs. Instead of looking at that as each particular line item, we can call Burger King eating out, we can call Maple Glen Pizza eating out, and we can call Panera Bread eating out. So when you go to run a profit and loss, it will say that your eating out will be the sum of all four of these vendors. Now, it makes sense to do it this way for kind of your own sanity. Now, again, when you're going to run a report, unless you want a report that says Burger King, Maple Glen Pizza, Panera Bread, Subs, you can lump all of these descriptions into one category. You can have a total for your eating out for the month. Okay, so now that we have the checking account organized, let's move over to the credit card account. Now, again, I did this by myself for the sake of time. I categorized everything for you already. Again, if you're doing this on your own, call the description in column C whatever you want the category to be in column D. Now, the reason I'm showing you the credit card and not just automatically assuming that we're going to do it together is this. One major important thing to note is this. For credit card accounts, sometimes the download from the bank will give you positive numbers. In the download I have, it is saying that all of his charges are positive numbers, which makes sense, right? Because the more he spends, the more positive his credit card balance is. But in terms of importing, which we're going to get to next, and analyzing, we want our expenses or we want our purchases to be negative. Now, watch how I do this. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to right click on column C. I'm going to insert. I'm going to say equals a negative. Now, the reason we want to equal negatives is we're going to make all of these numbers a negative number. So as you can see, I now made this a negative 106.95. I'm going to go to the bottom right here where this plus sign is and drag this all the way down, right? Go up here. Now I'm going to right click on all of this. I'm going to go to copy. It's going to bring me back up here. I'm going to left click here, and then I'm going to right click. I'm going to paste special. I'm going to paste just the values. Now, what this does is it now gives me negatives over here with no formula at the top. As you can see over here, I have a formula, and it's now in reverse, right? Now, if this doesn't make sense for you, again, please feel free to reach out, and I can explain how to do this more. However, let me repeat this process. I'm going to back. Now, I insert an extra column. All of my credit cards are positive. I want them to be negative. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add an extra column. I'm going to say equals a negative equals negative. I'm going to come over here, click on this. So this now equals a negative B2 or a negative 106.95. I'm going to click enter. I now have a negative 106.95. I'm going to drag this formula all the way down. Now that we have all negatives here, I'm going to right click copy. I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to click into this column. I'm going to right click, paste 1, 2, 3. This will now give me only values, which are the negative values that we want. Now I can simply just delete this column and get it out. Now again, depending on what bank account you have, the numbers will come out positive or negative. But you think about it like this: all imports into QuickBooks for anything that is a negative number, anything that you're purchasing, it is deducting from your bank account or it's deducting your credit card, right? So this 6-pack support for $106.95. On his credit card, he spent $106.95. Now, it's all about the presentation at this point. In order to present it in QuickBooks, we need to say that this is a negative number or it is an expense. Again, this is a very important note to have. Okay, so now that we have two final products in Excel, we can certainly stop here and we can just analyze it in Excel, which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking. But that will open us up to questioning whether or not we have everything, right? Now, we can go over that in more detail in the following section. However, very simply, we need to reconcile this information. We need to know that what we're putting in actually agrees to what's happening. Now, the easiest way to reconcile, I recommend at least, is doing this in QuickBooks Online. This will ensure accuracy. Not only will ensure accuracy, QuickBooks Online is a little bit easier on the eyes and is a little bit easier to navigate than an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. So now that we have this organized, we have the final products, we know why we need to get it into QuickBooks Online. The final step before we import is we need to compare our column D, these categories, to what our categories are on the chart of accounts in QuickBooks Online. Now, if you remember correctly, the chart of accounts is our backbone, and it is what we want to call things in our accounting system. Please follow along as I add and compare several changes to categories in QuickBooks Online. And just a final note, it took me about 20 to 30 minutes to organize this data on my own outside of this course. Okay, so now that we've categorized and organized the Excel for both the checking account and the credit card account, the final step before we can import all of this information into QuickBooks Online is we want to compare the categories that we made in column D for both spreadsheets to what is in our chart of accounts in QuickBooks Online. Now, the easiest way to do this is to do the following. We want to go into each separate Excel, copy and paste the categories, and make them a pivot table. What this does is it will reduce the amount of items we need to look at and compare. Now, follow along as I do this. So the first step is I'm going to go into my checking account. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy all of the categories that I have down here just by simply scrolling down. I'm going to right click, select copy. I'm going to go back in here to book 1. I'm going to go on row 2 and paste. Now, here's all my checking account categories. I'm going to call this the category. Double click to open it up a little bit. So now I have all the checking. Now let's get all of the credit cards. So I'm going to go to credit cards and do the same thing. I'm going to copy everything here. I'm going to right click, copy, come back over here to book 1, and I'm going to go to the bottom of all of this and I'm going to paste it. Now, this is showing every single category for every single description. We do not need all of that information. All we really need is just individual ones. For example, we don't need all 3 American Express. We don't need all 4 bank charges. We just want to look at each category here. The easiest way to do this is to select column A, go to Insert, and go Insert Pivot Table. Now, we want to select the table or range, which we did. I'll select OK. So we'll come back here to this pivot table. I'm going to click on the pivot table itself. I'm going to come back over here to Category, select that. Now, this breaks down into a much easier and digestible format. as you can see, instead of having about 270, we only have about 40 items to compare. We're not going to compare every single one, but I will go through several with you. One major thing to notice here, you will see American Express payments, Chase credit card payments, Bank of America payments. What these are is these are transfers. So if I go back just to show you, I'm going to go to my checking account. Here's my American Express payments. Now, this is saying, this is coming directly from his checking account. This is saying that from the checking, he paid his American Express $2,956.74. Now, what's going to be very important moving forward is that this is considered a transfer. This is transferring money from one account to another account. So, if you remember what we did previously, we already set up the bank account and we already set up the credit card account. So there's no need to add an extra category here. There's no need to add an extra category here since this is simply his Bank of America payments. And finally, there's no need to set up the Chase credit card payments since these are simply transfers. Again, when we go and input his American Express, you will see that these payments are on his American Express register. If we go down here, you will see the payments down here. Now, this is very, very important to know because when we go to import, most people I come into a major problem with call a payment an expense when in reality, these payments here are paying down the balance of all these individual transactions. Hopefully that makes sense. This is very important to know. Now, let's go back in here to book one. And I'm going to compare a couple of these. So let's go over the car insurance, let's go over the cell phone, and let's go over the contractor. And also, for the sake of this, I'm going to highlight everything that we do not need to import. Again, we do not need to do this because these are transfers. These are not expenses. They are simply transfers. Now, let's go into car insurance. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to see if this category is already in QuickBooks. And if it's not, I either want to adjust the category I have in here or I want to add a completely new one. And I'll do both. Now, let's go here. I'm going to go in my QuickBooks account for My Favorite Marketer. I'm going to go down here to accounting and I'm going to go to my chart of accounts. Now, there's two ways we can do this. We can simply sort by the name here and we can go, okay, do I see car payments in here? Do I see car insurance in here? I see a car loan. I see a car and truck. I see regular insurance, but I don't see car insurance. Okay, so since I do not see car insurance in here, let me do one more check. So I'm going to filter by name here. Now I'm going to go car insurance. Okay, so I don't see anything for car insurance in here. So what I want to do is I want to go over here again. I want to go to new. I want to go to the account type. Now again, car insurance is an expense. We're going to go down here to expenses. We are expending money. We're paying the car insurance. Now we'll go down here. We're going to select the detail type. And I'm going to go to insurance. And I'm going to name this car insurance. Hit save and close. So now when I go to import, I will already have a car insurance category in here. Again, when I go to my import, I will have car insurance in here. And when I run a profit and loss, all of the descriptions, all of the transactions that I call car insurance will now roll up into that. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's go back here to book one. Next one I want to go over is cell phone. Okay, so cell phone is a pretty common one. Let's see what we have in here. So I'm going to start going here. Let's type in cell phone. I do not see anything for cell phone. Okay. So now I showed you how to add a new one. Now let's adjust one in here, right? We don't need all this information in here. So I'm going to scroll down here and see what we have. Now we have a lot of different categories, as you can see already in here. We do not have any reimbursable expenses for this client. So instead of creating a new one, I'm simply going to adjust this one. And what we can do is go over here to the drop down. I'm going to select edit. So I'm going to go over here. It's already an expense. The detail type needs to change to utilities, which is, typically a cell phone. So I'm going to go and call this cell phone. I'm going to come over here, delete this. We do not need to worry about a description for the moment. I'm going to hit save and close. Yes, that's okay. We're going to... Okay, so the final thing that I want to show you now is how to add a subcategory. So what a subcategory is, and I can show you a great example of how to use this, is we want something to roll up into another category. So the example I want to show you is this. I'm going to go back here to my book 1. I'm going to come down here, and as you can see, we have multiple different utilities. So what we want to do is we want to have cable roll up into a utility, we want to have electricity roll up into a utility, and we want to have our water roll up into a utility. Now, here's how we can do this. I'm going to go back in here to QuickBooks, and as you can see earlier, I believe we actually made an electric payment category. So the easiest way to do this is to go over here to the drop down arrow. I'm going to select this, I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to say this is a sub account. Now what is it a sub account of? It's a sub account of utilities. So I'm going to go here and hit save and close. Now we have two more that we want to add. We want to add our cable and we want to add our water. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go back up to the top, I'm going to select new. I'm going to go change the account type to an expense. This is our cable expense. I'm going to change the detail type to utilities, and I'm going to name it cable. And finally, I'm going to add it as a sub account of utilities. And as you can see, my electric payments are already underneath utilities. I'm going to select this. I'm going to go, okay, let's make one more. We're going to call this one the water bill. So I'm back down here. I'm going to add one more expense. I'm going to go here, go to utilities. I'm going to call this the water. I'm going to go here to make it a sub account of utilities. So now I have 3 sub accounts underneath utilities. I have my water payments, I have my electricity payments, and I have my cable payments. So now I'm going to hit save and close. Now, those are the 3 common ways to add, edit, and sub out categories. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through and compare every single one on this course. I'm going to do this outside of the course. In your spare time, or in your time watching this training, please go through and add or edit for each of these categories so that when we go through, you'll be able to select this when we're adding them into QuickBooks Online. Okay, so now that we've gathered the information, we've organized it, and we compared our categories here to the categories in the chart of accounts of QuickBooks Online, the final step is we want to import this information, and then we want to reconcile it to the bank account. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Importing into QuickBooks lecture. Okay, so now that we have organized, formatted, and compared the checking account and the credit card account, the description, and the categories to what is going on in QuickBooks Online, it is now time to import this information. Now, the first and most important thing we need to do is we need to copy and paste each separate import tab and paste it into its own separate Excel. You can follow along as I do this. However, the reason that we need to separate it out is that in order to import, this information needs to be in a CSV file. I repeat, it needs to be in a CSV file. Also, again, it is very, very important that deductions from your credit card or bank account are negative numbers. Now, in order to get this information to its own Excel, I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to right-click copy. I'm going to come over here to File, New, Blank Workbook. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to paste. Now, I'm going to open all this up so I have a better view of it. Okay, so once we copy and paste into a separate Excel, we then need to remove the balance column, and we need to remove the category column, even though we just did all of that. Now, The reason that we do this is that we only want to bring in relevant information. Unfortunately, there is not a simple way to just import this information one time. In a separate training, I can show you how to import this one time with the categories already in there using an app called SAS AMP. But for this course, we are only going to be importing the date, the description, and the amount for each particular transaction. Once we copy and pasted both Excels into a separate Excel file, we can then go into QuickBooks Online and upload these files. Okay, so now that I have this information in its own separate Excel, again, this is the Checking Account Import tab. I'm going to File, I'm going to Save As, and very important here, I'm going to save it somewhere I know. I'll save it here in my Udemy file. And as you can see down here, I want to save this as a type CSV, comma, delimited. Okay, and I'm going to call this the Checking Account Import. I'm going to hit Enter and Save. And that's okay. Some features in your workbook might be lost. That's okay. That is not relevant for us right now. Okay, so now that we have saved this as a CSV file, we want to go back into QuickBooks Online, and I want to go over here to Banking. I'm going to hit this banking screen right here, and it's going to bring it to a screen like this. Now, in a separate training, I can show you how to automatically connect so that your transactions automatically come into QuickBooks. However, for this course, we are going to upload the transactions manually. So I'm going to select this, Upload Transactions. Once I'm here, I'm going to select a file to upload. As you can see here, download transaction can only be in a CSV file. I'm going to browse. I'm going to come over here to where I saved the file as, and I'm going to go to my checking account import. Now you can see it's a CSV file. It's as simple as that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select Next. Now, it's going to ask us, here is my bank file. This is what I'm importing. Here's the QuickBooks account. It's going to. So as you can remember, when we first started out, we set up the checking account as its own bank account. You can see it right here. This is saying that when we go to upload this information, it will all be going to this bank account. So watch as I follow. I'm going to select this bank account. I'm going to hit Next. And now we're going to get into the mapping field. So what this is saying is, this is what is saying in our Excel. Column 1 says the day. Column 3 says the description. And we don't really know what's going on in column 2. So the easiest way to do this is to map it out directly to what it is. So for example, this date is obviously going to be a date. The description down here will be the description. And this amount will be the amount column here. Now, my CSV file has both positive and negative numbers. Again, this is very important to understand. The positive numbers are going to increase my bank account, and the negative numbers are going to decrease my bank account. It is the same thing with the credit card. Anything negative is actually going to increase the credit card, and anything positive is going to decrease the credit card, because that is the account type that we set up. There is a major difference between a credit card, which is a liability, and a bank account, which is an asset. Now that we are here, we're going to select Next. It is going to ask us which transactions we want to import, and we want to import everything. So as you can see, these are all of my amounts directly from the CSV. These are all of my descriptions directly from the CSV, and these are all of my dates directly from the CSV. I'm going to select Next because we have all the information. It says, QuickBooks will import 179 transactions using the field you chose. Do you want to import now? Yes, we do. We will find out in the final section whether we have everything or not. But for now, we're just going to get everything in here. Okay, so our import was completed. Next step, let's accept some of these transactions. So we'll go down here to Let's Go. And as you can see now, in QuickBooks, I have a $5,000 balance. Now, this was the initial balance I set up when I set up my bank account. From here on out, I'm going to import and add all of my transactions down here. Now as you can see, it's coming in based off the dates. 129, 131, 21. And if we go down here to last, this will get us to our very last transaction that we have. Your bank account is all set. That is okay. So we're going to get out of here. Got it. It's going to ask you a bunch of pop-ups. Just click got it or click next or click out of it. Now, the easiest way to import all this information is to sort by the description. And the reason we want to sort by the description is that instead of going line by line and clicking add, 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 we can simply select all of these and say, okay, I want to accept them. Now, don't hit accepted right now because we didn't actually add the category yet. So let's add a couple and show you how it's done. So I'm going to unclick all of these first. The only way to add in for it to recognize what you're trying to do is to do it from the bottom up. So the easiest way to do this is I'm going to go to the last page and I'm going to go to the very bottom here. Now, as you can see, we have our water payments right down here. So if I click into it like I just did, it will show you that the bank detail is saying North Wales Water. If I go over here to my checking account and I sort for my North Wales Water, you will see that it should be going to the Utilities Water category. So let me go back into here, and I'm going to select the water payment. So now, as you can see, it just changed this one right above. So instead of having to go through and saying that every time we need to select add, we can just add one of them down here. We can also add the payee, which is North Wales Water. I'm getting this directly from the bank detail here. Now this vendor payee, this is who we're actually paying. We're paying the North Wales Water Department. So I'm going to click add, hit save, and as you can see, it now added anytime the bank detail says North Wales Water, it'll go over here and add in North Wales Water, and it'll go to utilities. So I'm going to click out of here because these are good, right? I'm going to click add, and I'm going to click add. Okay, do we want to create a rule? Now, creating a rule is definitely a time-saving activity. However, for this course, we're not going to do this quite yet. However, let's go back into here. So now the next one is we have our Verizon Wireless. So I want to go down here and type in Verizon Wireless. So we are paying Verizon Wireless for our cell phone. Okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to hit add. Okay, the next one, we'll do one more and then I'll show you how to add in multiple at a time. So I'm going to go down here to USA Police Officer, and I'm going to add in the payee, USA Police Officer. And again, I'm getting this vendor payee directly from my bank detail. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit save. Now, this, according to our spreadsheet over here, is a charity payment. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to select charity. Now I set all these up. All the categories I set up compared to my spreadsheet. So I'm going to hit add. Okay, so now let's say we want to get a couple of them here at a time. We don't want to go through and click add, add, add all the way up. The easiest way to do this is we'll go into one and we'll say, okay, I'm going to go back down here. Again, I'm going to add in the vendor payee, which is USA Insurance. And I am getting that directly from my bank detail. So now every time I pay USA Insurance, it will come through as the vendor USA Insurance. So if I ever want to report and figure out how much I'm paying one particular vendor, it's easy to do that now. Again, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to double check this. My USA Insurance is my health insurance payments. So I'm going over here and go to health insurance. Okay, so now all of my USA Insurance all now say USA Insurance payee and category health insurance. Now, if I want to add all these in, I can go click, 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 click. Let me make sure I don't have any more in here. Looks like I have one more. So I'm going to click this final one. I'm going to come up here to my batch action, and I'm going to accept selected. Now, this is going to take each one of those USA Insurance and add them all in at one time. As you can see, it did 6 transactions accepted. Okay, so that's pretty much a general rundown of how you want to add in these particular categories. Just because we imported them into QuickBooks does not mean they're actually in QuickBooks yet. It's in this For Review tab. If I go over here to my Review tab, you can see all the ones that we already added. And you can see how I added it. Now, this USA Insurance, I added to expense health insurance. And this water payment, I added to my expense utilities water. I also added a vendor for each one. Okay, so now let's go over some of the tricky ones. And remember before how I was saying that we needed to figure out these transfers, right? You know, the transfers to the payments, transfers to the credit card account. These are going to be treated a little bit differently. Okay, so let's get some of these tough ones out of the way. Let's go to this one, for example. Now, again, we're in the checking account. And this transaction in particular that I'm looking at on the Excel right here is saying that on 126, we made a $2,956.74 payment to my American Express credit card. So instead of calling that a expense and, you know, categorizing up that way, I'm simply transferring money from one account to another account. So let's do one, for example. Let's find the American Express. So here they are. So here's the 126 payment. Now, again, we are in the checking account screen. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to click on this. Now, it automatically knows that this is some type of transfer because it's saying American Express. QuickBooks is a relatively smart system, not as smart as some people would like, but it's a relatively smart system. It kind of understands that American Express is a credit card. It understands that it's a transfer, right? But it's not transferring to anywhere. It's transferring to this uncategorized asset. Now, this is not correct. It should be transferring to the liability account that we have set up. And as you can see here, we have the bank account and we have the credit card. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the American Express credit card. So what this does is it now takes the money from the checking account here and it throws it into the American Express credit card. So I'm going to record the transfer. Now I'm going to do this again. On the 129, we made another payment of $2,956.74. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to record a transfer, and QuickBooks actually picked up that it's an American Express credit card payment. So again, I'm going to hit record transfer. I'm not going to create a rule, as we talked about already. And let's go to the final one. So the final payment we made, looks like we made it on 5/22/2018. So when we go to do the American Express import, there's already going to be 3 payments in there. What that means is our balance is going to be those 3 payments together. Now, if you can follow along a little bit, those, let's say, $6,500 worth of payments, you know, the 2 that we just made and this one right now, are going to reduce my American Express balance by $6,500. We haven't picked up any expenses on that yet. We haven't added anything to American Express yet. So, if I was going to run a report, you would see that on my American Express balance, we'll have the $8,000 that we started out with, and it's going to be reduced by $6,500. Now, we know that's not accurate because we need to add in the expenses from American Express. So, let's record one more transfer here. Okay, so now that I've added in the transfers, I want to get the rest of this information in so I can start running some profit and loss reports on the checking account. Now, the easiest way, and the way that I recommend doing this, is scrolling down to the bottom and going to last. Let's start with the last one first. This way, we'll be able to add everything as it flows up. Okay, so for example, let's go to the U.S. Treasury. I'm going to add the U.S. Treasury as a vendor or payee. I'm going to hit save. And this is going to my taxes and license category, right? Now, you'll see a couple more transfers here. Now, if we go over to my Excel, I'm going to go and say, okay, what are these transfers for? Okay, these transfers, these are transfers to his wife. So, this is him giving money to his wife, and in this case, he's actually getting money from his wife. So these are simply just transfers back and forth. Now, For the sake of money management and for the sake of knowing how much we expend each month, I am not going to call this a transfer. I'm simply going to call this a wife expense. Who knows what is actually going on here? So I'm going to say, okay, this is for the wife. I'm going to hit save. And I already have a category set up called wife. So now I'm going to add all of these in. And as you can see, we have a couple of them, so I'm going to go add, add here. This one, since it's coming on the received end, does not automatically get recognized. So I'm going to say, okay, wife. And I'm going to go down here to wife. Whoops, wife here. Okay. So I'm going to select this last one, and I'm going to say, okay, let's accept all of these. Okay. So now we're back to here. Now we have Toyota. So instead of going through each and every one of these, I'm going to assume that you're able to actually follow along and add all these in by yourself. So, for example, let's do one more. So I'm going to go into Toyota. I'm going to select the option of Toyota, if I can spell it right. I'm going to select add. I'm going to hit save. Now, these are car and truck payments, right? This is him paying the car bill. Now, what we want to do here is we want to say, okay, accept all of these. Go over here to batch actions, and I'm going to accept selected. Okay, so now this leaves us with just a couple more left. For example, Tillman Builders, we have another tax, we have some Synchrony Bank. If you're going through, you may see that QuickBooks wants to record it as a transfer. However, these are not transferred. These are expenses for the shopping. The reason I know these are expenses for the shopping is because when I organized over here and I went to my Synchrony Bank payments, I will see that we wanted to call these shopping. These are not transfers. Okay? So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to select add. I'm going to make the payee Synchrony Bank. Synchrony Bank. And I'm going to call this shopping. So if it gives you that option to record a transfer, we do not want to record a transfer. And this one may be a little more fine-tuning. You may need to actually click into each one at once to record a transfer. You'll see this several times in here. I'll show you another one in a second. Again, we want to go here. It's going to pick up the vendor to pay a Synchrony Bank, and we're going to select a category as shopping. So I'm going to select add. Again, we do not want to create a rule. Now we have two more. I'm not going to go through these. I'll show you the other ones that it's going to give you this option on. So I'm going to go back here, and as you can see, we have all of these to import. I'm going to let you import these all by yourself, and we'll be able to tell if you're right or wrong after this. So let's see. None of these all look good. You see where here it says transfers? Again, it wants to say that these Chase payments are transfers. Now, we do not have a category set up for Chase. We are not tracking his Chase credit card. What we want to do is we want to say, okay, these Chase credit cards. Now, so since we do not have a Chase credit card account set up, I want to call these directly expenses. Now, the reason I'm calling these directly expenses are I want to know how much I'm spending on Chase each month. Now, from here, not to confuse you, if you wanted to add in your Chase credit card, you would simply follow the same process. You would download it from chase.com into Excel, categorize it, format it, and then copy and paste into a CSV file, and then we will just import it like we just did for the checking account. For the sake of time, I am not going to do that. I'm going to simply call these expenses. Now, I can call these whatever expenses I want since we don't really know. We're not really sure what's going on here. So I'm going to say Chase, and I'm going to pick a good account to put this in. So I'm going to call these uncategorized expenses. And the reason I'm doing that is, again, this is a Chase credit card payment. However, we do not have the Chase expenses. So we will never be able to reconcile the Chase account because we do not have the expenses that make it up. So in order to reconcile and in order to analyze our checking account and our American Express account, I'm going to simply add this as a Chase, and I'm going to call it an uncategorized expense. Okay? Now, again, every time that QuickBooks wants to transfer, we need to click into it, and we need to, we need to click into it, and we need to click on Add Here. Okay, so now that we have a little better idea of what is a transfer, when to transfer, and what are expenses, we're going to add in the rest of these transactions. Okay, so let's start at the bottom. So the last one I have on here is Tillman Builders. So I added in Tillman Builders as a payee, and I said this is a house repair. The next, this is a simple tax payment. So I'm going to call this the U.S. Treasury, and it's going to taxes and licenses. Now, here we run into this transfer issue again. I want to select Add. I want to say that this is a Synchrony payment, Synchrony Bank. I want to say that this is a shopping expense. Okay, so now we have just a couple more tricky ones before we can kind of get all this in here one time. The reason that we need to add out instead of transferring is that we will not be able to bulk upload or bulk batch action everything in. So I'm going to go, okay, go back to here. I'm going to say that this is a shopping expense. And I'm going to go back up here and call this Synchrony Bank. I'm going to add again. And I'm going to say, okay, this is shopping. Now again, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to select Add. I'm going to select Synchrony Bank. I'm going to say that this is a shopping expense. Now, as you can see, this is quite annoying. We do not want to do this all the time. Okay, so how many more do we have? Let's see, only a couple more. So let's go through these pretty quick. So I'm going to go Add, Synchrony Bank, shopping. I'm going to go here, Add, Synchrony Bank, shopping. I'll go back here to Add, Synchrony Bank, shopping, and one more. So let's get on here to Add, Synchrony Bank, and shopping. Okay. So now that we have those out of the way, let's make sure we have no more transfers in here. And again, you'll be able to see the transfers because instead of saying Add Here, it'll say Transfer. So it looks like we should be good to, oh, there are a couple more. These are those Chase ones, so let's get these out of the way too. So I'm going to go Add, Chase, Uncategorized expense. I'm going to go down here to Add, Chase, excuse me, I forgot to click Add, get out of here, Chase, Uncategorized expense. Okay, so just a couple more here. Chase, Add, Uncategorized expense. Okay, we got another one. We go to Add, Chase, Uncategorized expense. So again, when we run a profit and loss, all of these Chase payments are going to be under an uncategorized expense. Okay, so just two more here. I'm going to, whoops, and see, make mistakes all the time here. I'm going to click out of here. I'm going to click Add, Chase, Uncategorized expense, and one more boring one. So I'm going to go down here to Chase. I'm going to go to Add, Chase, Uncategorized expense. And again, in a perfect world, we would have our Chase transactions in QuickBooks, and that way we would call these transfers. But again, for the sake of time, we're only doing two accounts. We're only doing the American Express, which we transferred from the Bank of America, excuse me, from the bank checking account into the American Express liability account. Now we have all these transfers out of the way. So, oh, I spoke too quickly. Here's one more. So, again, this is another credit card payment, but since we're not adding in each of these credit cards, we just simply want to call these uncategorized expenses. So I'm going to go here, save. If you can master the transferring back and forth, and you can understand the concept of it, that will get you about 10 light years ahead of anyone else that uses QuickBooks Online. When people call me to fix their QuickBooks, 9 out of 10 times it has to deal with transferring. They do not understand that when you're transferring money from one account to another, if it is set up, it simply needs to be a transfer. Now, since these are not set up, again, these need to be uncategorized expenses. So we'll go one more here, and we'll go to Bank of America, uncategorized expense. Okay, so now I got all my little transfers out of the way. They're all here now. So now I can just simply add everything that I want. So let's go back to the bottom here. So now you can see all of the stuff I already have out. So let's start going through some of these. So I'm going to go to subs. I'm going to add in subs as a payee. Hit save. We know that this is eating out. The next one I want to go to is public storage. So I'm going to say public storage. I want to go to program specialty insurance. Just like that. Save. And let's see, what did we call program specialty insurance? So if I come over back here to my Excel where we mapped everything out, I'm going to go down here, and this is car insurance. So I'm going to go back here to QuickBooks, and this is good. It actually already is in car insurance. So all my program specialty insurances are good. Okay, so now let's go up. Plumbing, Benjamin Franklin. Okay, so we're going to go plumbing, Benjamin Franklin. Just like that. Save. And we know that these are house repairs. Okay, so we have this Philadelphia newspaper. Okay, Philadelphia newspaper. And I can't remember off the top of my head what we called this. So let's go back here. And we call this subscriptions. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say subscriptions. And we're good to go. Okay, next one. Philadelphia Electric Company. Go down here to Philadelphia Electric Company. And again, this is a utility, but we set up a separate account for the electric payments. And one more time, you can see how it's automatically picking up everything here. Okay, so without going through every single transaction, I hope you can follow along with what I'm doing here. The next and final step of this is adding in all these transactions. Okay, so as you can see here, in the cut time, I went through each and every one of these transactions, added in the payee, and put in the category. And as I'm going through, I noticed I did one wrong. Now, this will happen. You will be wrong from time to time. Okay. So let's go out of here. And now that I know I have all of this mapped out correctly, I know the maids are house cleaning. I know that interest income is interest income. We have some deposits as income. Basically, all of my left in here that's for review matches exactly what is in my checking account import over here. Okay, so now the easiest way and the quickest way is I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to batch action, and I'm going to accept selected. This is going to automatically accept every single transaction that I just mapped out. Instead of going line by line and clicking add, which you certainly can do, and you may want to do the first couple of times, you can get everything into QuickBooks one time. So now there's nothing left for review. Everything is now in QuickBooks. And you'll know if you followed along correctly and everything's good, you should have $9,000. You should have, $9,038.57 in QuickBooks. So the next step is we want to repeat the exact same process for the American Express. And I'm not going to go through all the American Express with you. However, I will repeat the process right now to show you how to get it in there, and then you can categorize it out yourself, and I will do it myself as well. Now, as far as timing, it took me about 10 to 15 minutes to categorize all these transactions in QuickBooks outside of this course, okay? So it shouldn't take that long to go line by line and make sure you have everything. Okay, so now that we have the checking account in QuickBooks, the next is we want to get the credit card account in QuickBooks as well. Okay, so going back to our initial how to import lecture, the first and most important thing that we need to do is we need to copy and paste this American Express import all of this information, and we need to put it into its own separate Excel. Again, the reason that we want to do this is because we can only import using a CSV file. So I'm going to copy and paste everything here. I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to New, and I'm going to go to Blank Workbook. Now once I'm in here, I'm going to right click, copy, and I'm going to paste everything here. I'm going to click on this, double click to get everything out this way. Okay, so we know how important it is. It needs to be in a CSV file. Again, it is also very, very important, especially for credit cards, that any deduction, so anytime we make a payment, it is a negative number, and you'll see why. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, again, we need to copy and paste into Excel, and we need to remove the balance column, because we're not putting in the balance, and we need to delete the category column because we need to put the categories in QuickBooks. Again, there is a much simpler way to do this. However, it's way more complicated. It uses an application on QuickBooks called SAASANT. What you can do is you can actually map all this stuff out. You can have the category here like we just had. The balance is here. And what you can do is you can import everything one time. I can go over that in a separate course, and it's very helpful. However, for this course, we're going to add it manually. So the next step we need to do is we need to go File, we need to go to Save As, and we need to save it somewhere. So once I'm here, again, this needs to be saved as a CSV file, a comma delimited file, and I'm going to call this the American Express import. So now, once I save it as a CSV file, I'm going to go back into QuickBooks. Now, from this screen, I'm going to go to this file upload here. So I'm going to go here. We've seen this screen before. I'm going to go back down here to select a file to upload, and as you can see again, it needs to be a CSV file. I'm going to select Browse. It will take me to my American Express import. I'm going to select Next. And now, again, where is this going to map out to? What account is this going into? Well, we already did the checking, so it's not that one. This is the American Express import, so it needs to go to the American Express credit card account. Select Next. Make sure this is mapped out right. The date looks good. Description is fine. And finally, we need to add the amount. So I'm going to select Next. As you can see, it is ready to import. We have all the transactions in here. I'm going to select Next again. And we want to import 96 transactions. Okay. So now that we're here, we need to accept a transaction. Now, this is a very similar process to what we did with the checking account, except for one major thing. Now, the major thing is that we saw earlier that there were payments being made to this American Express account. Now, what we want to do is we want to find these accounts first. Now, remember how we transfer the money because we're saying that it was a pay down of this credit card. So what's very important here is, as you can see, and remember how I talked about earlier, when we went to the checking account, we moved over around $6,500 into this credit card liability account. It's already being accounted for in this register. So those payments, this $496, this $2,956, is already in here. It's already on the American Express register. So instead of double counting it, we're simply going to match it and say, yes, this is the same exact transaction that I already did. So this transfer of $496 already happened in the checking account, and it already happened in American Express. I'm simply adding it in again in order to reconcile it, and since it's coming from my Excel file here, I'm going to match it and say, yes, this is the same exact transaction. So I'm going to click Match here. Now again, that one was easy because it was, an interesting dollar amount, an obscure dollar amount, and it was also an obscure date. Now these are the same dollar amounts on two different days, excuse me. So what I want to do is go over here. I want to say, okay, this is the first transfer that happened on 1/26. So it gives you the options of both. For this case, it doesn't necessarily matter. For other times, it will definitely matter and will confuse you if you do not select the right day. It can get very confusing when you have multiple transfers. For simplicity, I made this one the first payment, which is on 1/26. I'm going to match this one, and this will leave me with one match left. So we're going to say, okay, match this as well. Now, again, that is a way more complicated way of doing things, a way of matching. Now, you need to do that in order to reconcile. Okay? So now that we're here, we want to go through the same exact thing that we just did. So for the next 5 or 10 minutes outside of this, I'm going to add in all of the payees, and I'll do Zoho for an example. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to go to the vendor payee, I'm going to say this is for Zoho. I'm going to add this, I'm going to save, and I remember correctly, in my credit card account, Zoho, sort by my description here. My Zoho is a marketing expense. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go down to marketing. And as you can see, it's going to add Zoho and marketing for each bank detail that we're bringing over. Okay, so in the meantime, I'm going to go through the register here, the for review tab, and I'm going to add a payee and category for everything. Now again, I want you to follow along with this Excel. This Excel needs to meet a direct match to what is in QuickBooks. So we did Zoho already. I'm going to go through the rest of this, add in the payees, and categorize it out. I will see you afterwards. Okay, so as you can see here, in the last 10 to 15 minutes, I went through and I categorized and I added every payee for every transaction that we have. I did this again according to the Excel that we have over here. Okay, so now that I have everything mapped out, I'm going to do the same thing I did for the checking account. I'm going to go to select all, this top button over here. I'm going to batch action, and I'm going to accept the selected and watch my QuickBooks balance change. Okay, so now I have a negative $4,322 balance in my American Express. Okay, so with all that being said, I now imported both Excel spreadsheets into QuickBooks Online. So from here, there's only a couple minor things left to do left. And the first and most important thing is that we want to reconcile. So in the next section, I'm going to show you how to reconcile the account. And by reconciling, we know that we are not missing any information from the checking account or the credit card. Hi everyone, welcome to the Reconciling Your QuickBooks Account section. Okay, so this is the final section, and this is probably the most important section. In this section, we're going to know if we're right or not. And what I mean by that is, do we have all the information that we need, and is it going to the right account? Now, the easiest way to do this is we need to go back to our initial Excel, the one that has our raw data on it, which is over here. And this is why we made this raw data account and exported it over here, because as you can see, the balances, when we sort out, kind of go all over the place. Now, if you can remember, this was exported directly from the client's bank account. He had a beginning balance of $5,000 in the checking account. So, if I follow along with this, this is his register in the checking account. At the very bottom down here, I'm going to have his ending balance. And again, this is all recorded in your checking account or your credit card account. You can actually go date by date, month by month, and reconcile month by month. In this case, we're going to do it all at one time, just because this isn't an in-depth training on reconciliations or where they go. It's really just showing you how to reconcile to know that we're accurate or that we're correct or not. And I made a mistake in the American Express to show you how we can tell that, right? So, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take this ending balance, which is $9,038.57. The next most important thing I want to know is I want to know what day is that on. So on 6/29/2018, he had a balance in the checking account of $9,000, $9,038.57. Okay, so let's reconcile this in QuickBooks in order to know that we're accurate or not. Okay, so to get to the reconciliation, I'm now in QuickBooks on the banking screen. So as you can see, I'm probably going to be fine here because in QuickBooks I have a balance of $9,038.57. So in order to actually know if we're right, I'm going to go over here to the gear icon. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go underneath Tools and I'm going to go to Reconcile. Okay, so now that I'm here, click out of these messages. They show up all the time and they're quite annoying. So I'm going to go down here. Now, as you can see, we set up our beginning balance in the very beginning of this course. We set up the beginning balance of $5,000. So my ending balance is $9,038.57 according to the statement. The ending day was on 06/29/2018. I'm going to hit Start Reconciling. So, as you can see, we have a zero difference. This is what you want to see every time when you reconcile. Click out of this message again, as it is quite annoying. So, QuickBooks and ourselves automatically imported and reconciled everything here. And we know that we're right because the statement ending balance said $9,038 and our clear balance said $9,038. Our beginning balance had $5,000. We spent $78,000 and we input or had income of $82,000. So, simple math. We have the $5,000, we add in the $82,000 of income, and we subtract the $78,000 of payments. That leaves us with a $9,038.57 balance. Now, if only it was this easy every time. Now, again, most people call me because this usually never says zero. In this case, if you followed along, it should say zero. The reason that it should say zero is because we took his data, which is over here. This is his raw data. This was exported directly from the bank account. So, throughout the whole course, we manipulated this. We added in categories. We called vendors, payees. We added in the amounts, etc. Now, in order to know that this Excel made it into QuickBooks, we need to reconcile. So we reconciled, and we have a zero difference. That means we did it. We're done. We reconcile this account. From here, we can go and analyze just the checking account. Now, I have further information and further courses on reconciliation, how to reconcile, why it's so important, but just know that it's very important because you'll never know if you're right or not unless you reconcile. You can say you have $1 million in a bank account, but if the bank account says you have zero, well, you don't really have $1 million, and you'll never know really the difference. Now, let's go to Finish Now here. And I'll show you simply. I'll hit Done here. So, we reconciled, right? We have all the information from the checking account in QuickBooks. We know that for a fact. The reason we know for a fact is because we reconciled it to the bank account. We looked at what was in QuickBooks and we said, okay, let's make sure all of this in QuickBooks is in the bank account and vice versa. We did that by reconciling. Again, we had a zero difference. We were able to reconcile. Now let's try to reconcile the credit card account. So I'm going to go over here. We just did the checking. I'm going to go over here to the American Express credit card. So again, we had a $6,000 balance, and we got that from his statement, which is right here on the raw data tab. As you can see at the very top, on January 1st or 2nd, he had a $6,000 balance. Now, at the very bottom, we want to do the same thing. On 6/29, over here, he had a $5,692.26 balance. Now, we know we're going to be off a little bit because when we're looking at the bank screen, I had a negative number here. So what did I do wrong? What's going on here? And I'll show you briefly how to fix this, but just know that, I did this on purpose to show you that things can go wrong from time to time. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go back to Reconcile. I'm going to come down here. Okay, so we're in the checking account, so I want to go to my credit card account. We have the right beginning balance. Now my ending balance, I'll put in the day first. The ending date was 06/29/2018, and the ending balance on that day was 5692.26. So it's 5692.26. Okay, so I'm going to start reconciling. Okay, so it's giving us a zero difference balance, which is good. That's what we wanted it to do. However, you'll see things in here that are not clicked, right? So what are these? This means that this, for example, this is a good one to look at. This expense on 2/22/2018 was coming from the bank account, and it was for a Chase MasterCard payment. Now, what this means is that this is in this American Express register. Now, if I go over here to my register, this is where I can see everything that's making up the balance. Now, you'll see up here my ending balance says negative $3,401.03. We know that that's wrong because in my credit card account, I have $5,692.26. So, what's throwing off the balance? Why is it not agreeing to what this number says? even though we reconciled, we were able to have a 0 difference, it's still wrong here. So what's causing it? Now, the easiest way to do this is you see these little C's and you see these little green boxes here. Now, as you can see, this was manually added from the bank feed. So when we imported all of our transactions, this transaction of $67.99 was in my Excel. Now, what this means also is that this that has no check and no box was not in my Excel. And I can do a double check real quick. So I'll go to this 225.57. I'll go over here and I'm simply going to search for 225. Now, I don't have any payments in here for any expenses or anything for 225. So, what does that mean? Now, let's go into here and click. Let's see what's going on. So I'm going to click into this particular transaction. I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to edit it. So, like, what? Why is this in here? What's going on? So, now that we're in this screen, we can see that we keep getting pop-ups. We can see that the payee is Chase. We can see that it's coming from, this is the payment account. This is where it's coming from. So it's coming from the checking account, and it's going to the American Express. Now, we know that this is wrong because this is a Chase payment. This is not an American Express payment. So, in order to change this, I want to select this category, and I want to go, okay, this is actually an uncategorized expense. And you can change it right from here. So I'm going to go click the uncategorized expense. I'm going to save and close. Now, this was reconciled in the bank checking account. It was reconciled there. That's why it's showing this message. It's okay to select yes. We didn't reconcile it in the American Express register. We reconciled it in the bank checking register. So I'm going to select yes. And now watch what happens when I go back to my reconciliation screen. Or excuse me, to my register screen. That 225 disappeared. Now, it is now gone. It is now on my uncategorized expense register. I removed it from this American Express because it wasn't an American Express payment. It was a Chase payment. I accidentally put it in the American Express, and I know that that was wrong. So I need to go through and figure out what else did I kind of do wrong. So if I had to guess, I put all of the Chase into the American Express when really they were all uncategorized expenses. So let me go here and save yes. Now, you can go through and kind of poke around and see where they are, or you can do this. You can sort by this checkbox. Now, this checkbox is going to give you the C. What a C means that it was cleared. It was tentatively reconciled. That means that this made it through the banking screen in QuickBooks. So what did it make it through the banking screen in QuickBooks, and why is it in this register? So as you can see, I just quickly went over here and said, okay, there's one more big one, right? This $8,000 payment has no C, it has no green box. It's showing up in my American Express register. Why is that? Well, because I made a mistake. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to get out of here again, and I'm going to call this an uncategorized expense. Okay. So now I'm going to save and close. Now, you see what I just did? I took it out of the American Express register where it was in. It was here first. I say, no, actually, it wasn't a payment to American Express. It was an uncategorized. So now it's going to get out of this register, and it's going to go into this uncategorized expense register. Okay. Same message as before. We are not going to be out of balance because we reconciled it in the checking account. So I'm going to hit save and close. Now, we should have the correct ending balance here. So now we have the 569226. And I'm going to go over here and I have my 569226. Now, I know that my ending balance is agreed. I have nothing else in this register that shouldn't be here. And I can just sort this again to make sure that that's accurate. I have nothing in here. Now, this was our opening balance. This was automatically reconciled. Okay. So I'm going to go back here to reconcile. Now I have the same $0 balance again, but I have no extra, I have nothing extra hanging out in here, right? So I'm going to say, okay, we reconciled for the 6 months. I know that everything is in my American Express register. I'm not missing anything, and I'm not adding anything that shouldn't be there. It agrees exactly to what is in the bank account on that day. Okay, so hopefully reconciling is that easy for you. Again, There are courses, there is a lot of training on just reconciliation alone. It is, 95% of the reason that people call me as a QuickBooks advisor. Well, my bank account doesn't agree to the QuickBooks balance. Well, did you reconcile? No. Well, that's the first step. You will never know what's wrong. You will never know if you have everything until you reconcile. So, now that we reconciled, we completed the course. Congratulations. Now, here's some things that I would review. Now, I'm going to have a further course on how to analyze, what to look for, where to look for it. But for you to get started, there are two major reports you want to look at. And the one is really the report that you want to look at. The one report, and how we'll get there, is we'll go over here to this report section. And we'll go down here to our profit and loss. Now, this is going to show me, since it is now October 16, 2019, it's going to show me my profit and loss for this year. Now, none of this information that we did in the checking account or the credit card account were from 2019. This was all from the first 6 months of 2018. So, I need to frame my report. I need to change the dates. Now, you can do this a number of different ways. The easiest way to do it is simply just change the day here. So I'm going to say this was for January 1st, 2018, and it's through 6/30/2018. Okay. So now I want to run my report here. So now we can see for the first 6 months how much we made versus how much we spent. And now we can also see what we spent everything on. We can see what we spent on home security. We can see what we spent on home supplies. We can spend on what we spent on house cleaning, house repair, investment advisors, marketing, massage, etc. The client is now able to see over a 6 month period where this $80,000 went. So he brought in $80,000, right? Now, in a perfect world, he would have $80,000 left in his bank account, but as we know, we don't have that in there. We had about $9,000 left. So, where did the rest of that money go? Well, it went to car payments, it went to car insurance, it went to cell phones, it went to charity, it went to contractors. Now, from here, I'm not going to tell you what's important and what's not important, where you should spend your money and, where you should cut back, but, this will give you a better idea of where everything is going. Now, you can also break this out by month. So if you want to say, okay, well, what happened in the month of January? I can say, okay, I want to frame my report for just the month of January. I'm going to hit run report here. And, oh, well, that was a pretty good month. I made $14,000 that month. Now, let's see what I spent. Oh, well, I spent about I have $11,000 of total expenses. Okay, well, I have $2,000 left over. So, with this remaining $2,000, $2,700, what should I do? Well, that's really up to you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do with that money. However, you now know that at the end of January, you had an extra $2,000 to your name, right? What can you do with that kind of money? Well, let's see. Maybe you can cut back on the membership fees a little bit, and now your net income will go up. You'll have a little bit more money. Okay, what if, I need to drop my marketing expenses a little bit. I realize I'm spending, almost $300 a month on house cleaning. I'm spending $2,100 a month on health insurance. Can I look at other plans? Here's some of the questions that I would kind of ask and start to, really dive deep into what's going on here. Now, without going too much further into an in-depth QuickBooks course, I will just show you how to know what makes this stuff up. Now, like I said, QuickBooks is very user-friendly. You can actually click into each one of these categories and see what's making it up. So, let's see what's making up this big balance. I simply click into here. I say, okay, I had one big payment. That was it. Okay, that seems reasonable. That's kind of my health insurance per month. Let's go out of here and see, okay, what looks odd in here? House cleaning. Why was house cleaning so much that month? So we're going to click in here and we're going to say, okay, we had one payment for $284. Okay, that looks good. Let's see here, membership fees, rent. Okay, shopping. What am I shopping on this month? Oh, okay. Now here's multiple things. Now these are all the descriptions that we had from the checking and the credit card account. As you can see, this $866 is made up of about 5 separate shopping payments. So, why did I spend so much at Macy's? Why did I spend so much at Amazon? Did I buy a new suit at Men's Warehouse? What's kind of going on? These are kind of some of the questions that you can start to ask yourself, and you can kind of start to analyze your own report and say, okay, now that I reconcile, now that it's all in one place, let's start to kind of take a deeper look into it month by month. What's going on month by month. Now, Again, hopefully with all this information, you're now going to be able to make a little bit more informed decision on a month by month, a 3-month, a 4-month, a 5-month, a 6-month basis, So in order to end this course, I'm going to hop on screen again on camera and thank you again one more time for joining the course. I'm also going to make myself available any way possible to help you out, whether it's a text message, a call. If you have trouble with the data itself, accessing QuickBooks, if your numbers don't equal my numbers, feel free to give me a call, a text, an email, and I'll be sure to help out. See you in the next screen.